the Pylon, a Midwest college football podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Satkoviak. Clinton, it is here. By the time you are listening to this, well, some of you, most of you, it will be Thursday. There will be football tonight. The Final Four, Clinton. Four Titans. I don't know, maybe Titans is a little bit of an over-exaggeration. Four giants of the college football world meeting off in this one. Notre Dame versus Penn State, Thursday night, 7:30 in the Orange Bowl. Ohio State, Texas, Friday night, 7:30 in the Cotton Bowl. A snowy Cotton Bowl, Clinton. Thank God they're playing the game inside, or it would look like they're in Columbus. Or how are you doing tonight?
Well, actually, I read a report today that shed some light on that, Ryan. They're only getting 1 to 3 inches of snow with some rain or ice, but it's supposed to be fine on Friday. People are all in this panic. But the good news is, Buckeye faithful who live in Dallas know how to drive in this. It's the Texas faithful in Texas that they should be worried about not being able to get to the game. As for me, I'm great, other than I spilled water all over my recording area right before we got on the show. So thankfully, all my stuff still works. I don't know about my PlayStation controller. We'll have to test that at another time. But other than that, I'm good. How are you, Ryan?
Buddy, it's not even the snowy weather. It's that they don't have any equipment to deal with it. So you get ice, and then it just sits there because they don't have salt trucks.
Got to know how to drive in ice then.
There's no fucking way you know how to drive on ice.
You just don't. That's how you do it.
Right. Well, what happens when you get tickets to the Cotton Bowl you paid $650 for, and it's like, guess what? You can drive on half an inch of ice, or you can stay home and eat $700.
Guess they'll refund me somehow. I don't know.
That's literally
I think it's all going to
not
pan
how it
out just
works.
fine. The report said today the Cotton Bowl is not moving the game, so people better just buck up and get ready.
Could you imagine if they pushed back the Cotton Bowl after they pushed back the Orange Bowl because they had to push back the Sugar Bowl? That would have been wild. I'm tired. I've had a long day. I made the mistake of playing hockey at 7:30 last night, and then the dog, when I got home, decided. I told Sam I was going to sleep on the couch last night as to not wake her when I got home at 12:15. But the dog met me downstairs and decided, I'm going to sleep on you tonight on the couch. So I did not fall asleep. And then I woke up at 4:50 today to go work out. So we're feeling good. I need a nap. I need to sleep for like 42 hours. And that's not going to happen, Clinton, because I'm going to be up all night tomorrow because regardless of what happens in this game, I'm going to be wired and attached to Twitter to read the post-game reactions. Win or lose, it'll either be celebratory or I will want to shoot myself
Wired
in the
and
face.
tired.
Wired and tired. I guess that's why God invented uppers and downers, and that's probably how Elvis died. So maybe we should not go down that path. This has the potential, I think, to be perhaps the best semifinals ever, and it also has the potential to be an absolute stinker. You look at some of these games, and I feel like for the majority of the 12-team playoff era, or the 4-team playoff, Jesus Christ, the majority of the 4-team playoff era, when we looked at some of these games ahead of time, we kind of had a pretty good idea. Okay, this probably isn't going to be close. You had a couple of those Oklahoma teams, like the year they played the 2019, they played the LSU team and got smacked around because
Smacked.
nobody was stopping that LSU offense. When Michigan State made it, the first time Washington made
Oh
it,
my
both
God.
times Notre Dame
Ohio
made it.
State Clemson, round one.
Um, just a lot of these games, like looking at it, it's like this isn't going to be close. And we have this weekend one game where it's essentially a pick 'em, Notre Dame, Penn State, that's fluctuated between 1.5 and 2 points in Notre Dame's favor, and Ohio State, Texas, which I think certainly has blowout potential, but I think that opened at 5.5, 6.5, depending on your shop, and it hasn't moved an inch. So I'm that feels like one of those we're all assuming Ohio State's going to win. It seems too easy. There's no way it can be that easy, right? Kind of games. But
Mm-hmm.
if Ohio State plays like they did the first two games, I don't think there's any doubt they win that game, but given what we've seen from Texas this year. So just before we kind of get into the matchups themselves tonight, what's your just overall thoughts, feelings, impressions on the four teams we have left here in the 2024 college football season?
As we mentioned before, we're guaranteed to get at least one of our coverage teams in the national championship. We have three of our four in the semifinal. So what a first year for inside the pylon coverage, getting to follow through this entire playoff. Pretty exciting. I'm intrigued by, and we'll dive into it here soon, just the overall matchups. Like, the Penn State, the Notre Dame, the run defenses and the run offenses, and how we've talked about it's essentially a Spider-Man meme, right? It's like, hey, I look at you and you look like me. And is this another repeat of the Georgia Notre Dame game? Except I think Penn State can actually punch back, where Georgia was kind of handicapped because of their offensive line, and by the fact that their receivers have stone hands. And then you look at Ohio State and Texas, and that goes on the opposite end of the spectrum of a rock fight. Is if both teams play their best, this could be a shootout, a
Certainly.
old-fashioned Western type shootout where it's maybe team with the ball last wins the game. The head coaching matchups are exciting. You know, everybody nitpicks on James Franklin as far as big game James. Well, it's not Bama and it's not Ohio State and it's not Michigan, but he has won two big games in this playoff. They are playoff games. He won them, and they won them fairly convincingly, I would say. Marcus Freeman, the youngest of all four, etching his name into playoff history, making this semifinal a chance to go to the national championship. I think he's got so many Notre Dame fans excited, even with a loss, as disappointing as it would be in this scenario. I think you, in a week or two, you find solace in that your future is very bright. And then on the flip side of that, Steve Sarkisian, who has resurrected his head coaching career and can certainly, I don't know, play call the shit out of a game, has a great Texas team that on their best day may be the best team in the country. And then you have Ohio State that looks like a juggernaut right now. And Ohio State that doesn't look like the team that people continue to bring up on every national podcast. Well, what if they go back to the team that they did against Michigan? Like that's not logically going to happen, guys. Like it's not going to happen. So many different little narratives. I asked another Ohio State fan this today, and I said, so what's your opinion on Ryan Day now? Like, is he safe? Did he do good enough for you to win two of these games that you're no longer want to burn the city of Columbus down if they lose this game against Texas? So just a bunch of fun little side pieces. The helmet matchups are fun. The uniform matchups are fun. I think from a helmet matchup standpoint for a national championship, the Ohio State silver and the Notre Dame gold would just look perfect on a national championship field. I'm not saying that that's my pick out of these two, but I think from a visual helmet standpoint, that'd be pretty exciting. But I'm looking forward to the games. My game's 2 days away. I know you said before the show you're about to sheet your pants with both excitement and nervousness for the game tomorrow, and I've not quite reached that point. So maybe check in with me Thursday night. It's more likely to happen about an hour before kickoff, though.
I'm going to be too busy tomorrow night to check in with you, my dude.
Oh, don't worry. I'll be tweeting. I'll be texting you, regardless of results.
I'm blocking you. You will not be able to reach me.
No, I think this is about as an intriguing game, and I'm sure we'll start with Penn State Notre Dame tonight. For me, as a neutral observer, like I really feel like no matter what, we're getting a great game in this matchup, and defining a great game is different for every person because in a world where a football where offense rules the day now and nobody really cares about a rock fight of great defenses anymore, where I like to see some good defensive play. Like, do I want to see every game be 10-3? No, but I can value a time when, you know, a game like Ohio State and Georgia a few years ago was in the 40s, and Michigan and TCU was in the 50s, and all these different things where we have nothing but points. And then these two teams are predicated on the ability to hold one another down to, hell, maybe a 17-13 type game.
Like the old barn burner Ohio State Notre Dame game a year ago.
Maybe Notre Dame will remember to put 11 people on the field this time.
Yeah, they've been pretty good at that this year. I think they got that one down now.
Or they could be Dan Lanning and maybe throw an extra person on the field. I don't know.
There you go. I mean, special teams, the way that they've been going with that, I wouldn't put it past them. I think most fascinating, I mean, aside from personal rooting interest, obviously that rules the day. That's always going to rule the day. But from just like an overall standpoint, I think like there's going to be some sort of narrative busted over the next 10 days with one or multiple of these teams, right? So you go chronologically here, you go Penn State, Notre Dame. You're looking at this Penn State Nittany Lions team, and I don't think I think we've done a pretty good job about not like properly contextualizing the Penn State run to this point, right? Like I think we're both very impressed with how they've looked, specifically since the Oregon game, and not kind of joining in the piling on like, oh, cool, you beat SMU, Boise State, congratulations, you got here. But that's still part of the narrative, right? Like the overall national discussion on Penn State is, and it was heading into the playoff. It's like, well, you got a gift wrapped cakewalk into the semifinals, and to their credit, they took advantage of it in resounding fashion. So there's still this narrative about James Franklin that, well, the man can't win a big game because the people who are detractors of James Franklin have been sitting here saying, well, beating SMU and Boise State's not a big game. And it seems like, and we talked about this with Matt a little bit the other night, like Notre Dame and Penn State are the same team in the sense that it seems like whenever they do something notable, the goalposts seem to move. The people who detract them move the goalpost to say, oh, well, you didn't do this. Oh, well, you didn't do that. Congratulations, Penn State. You made it to the semifinals. Well, you beat a group of 5 team in SMU. Congratulations, Notre Dame. You finally beat Georgia. Well, you did it without a back when they played a backup quarterback. And they're the same people who spent the last 3 weeks saying, well, Gunnar Stockton's better than Carson Beck anyway. Notre Dame's going to lose. So on the one hand, if you have Penn State winning this game, I'm sure there's still going to be some people who are like, well, you can't win a big game. It's Notre Dame. Who gives a shit? They suck. But like, there's going to be like the national, like the serious college football talking public is going to have to reckon with the fact that James Franklin won a big game, like a damn good big game. Like that is a resume, like I don't want to say a legacy defining win at a place like Penn State where they have won national champions, right? It's not like we're like if Kenny Dillingham did this, it's like Jesus Christ, just build him the statue in Tempe right now. But like for a guy who's been there for so long and by and large has come up short in these big games time and time again to get over that hump and get to the national title game. And I get that you'd still have that final boss in either Ohio State or Texas on the other side that you have to reckon with. But getting there to me would be a validation of everything that he's built over the last 10 years. And I mean, we can, even if they lose this game, you can still have that conversation after this year because you got to the Final Four. Like this is the first time Penn State has been in this position.
I don't think you're incorrect in saying it's a program defining or a legacy defining win. Penn State hasn't won a national championship since 1986. If he even puts them in the national championship, that is phenomenal compared to what they went through. And you think about the end of the Paterno era and everything that happened with that, and you didn't know where Penn State's program was going to go. And all the ridicule that Franklin has faced in his entire career, yet he is everything but he is consistent. He is the definition of consistency. Go to the Merriam-Webster dictionary and look up consistent, and the name James Franklin and Penn State's next to it. They're consistently 10 wins every year. And that's really hard for, I guess, fans to be accepting of when you expect more and you have talent to get more, but you're finally there and you have the opportunity now every year when it's a 12 team, and then whether it'll be 14 or 16 and after next year, who knows, but you're not missing the playoffs ever again if you're 10-2. So
Yep.
you're gonna have to cut back on the guy a little bit because he's gonna be in the playoffs every year.
Well, and then this is the type of run that then raises the ceiling of the program, right? Like you can recruit off of, you can recruit off of a run to the national title game, put yourself in a position to restock with talent. They've already done a pretty good job of this on the defensive side of the ball with them just seemingly churning out elite defensive players every other year. But then maybe you get some offensive guys to start complementing it. Maybe you put yourself in a position then where you are going 11-1, 10-2 every year now in an expanded Big Ten, where sometimes you'll get a little bit more of a favorable draw on the schedule, and you put yourself in a position to be a consistent college football playoff team. The issue on that end becomes, all right, well, we saw you make a run to the national title game or the national semifinals once. Well, now that raises the ceiling of what we expect. You know, maybe it's not like we need to get there every year, but by golly, you better get to that national title game or you better win us a national title because we've seen you can do it there. On the other side of the field, Notre Dame, you touched on Marcus Freeman still being a third-year head coach, but it's the prophecy with Notre Dame head coaches. In your third year, you either play for a national title or you wash out. Everyone back to frickin' Parsegian in their third year either played for it has to be played for a national title because Brian Kelly played for one. He didn't win one. But you either play for a national title or you end up getting fired at some point during your career. So if he wins this game, third year, playing for a national title. And for a program as a whole, I know everyone's had a lot of fun piling on Brian Kelly the last 3 weeks, but it's another opportunity to pile on Brian Kelly.
You included.
Well, fuck yeah, I'm gonna pile on Brian Kelly, but
You're
he
gonna
left.
pile on Brian
We're gonna
Kelly.
pile on Brian Kelly, Brian Kelly. As to be not to be confused with the pylons who play defense for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I digress. But the man left this program 3 years ago because he didn't think he could win a title here. He said he may not have said it specifically, but he very heavily implied it in his introductory press conference at LSU. I'm playing in the AL East now. I'm playing at a spot where I have the resources I need to win. And for 3 years later, the guy who you brought to run your defense, to take the team that you had to enhance it, and to win 3 consecutive top 10 games, situations that he notoriously struggled in his 12 years in South Bend, to get to the national title game in year 3. I mean, the narratives write themselves there.
While you're sitting 8-4 in that supposed AL East that you're in,
Mm-hmm.
that goes both ways, right? Like you enter a world that you can get more talent, and you have more money, maybe, but you're also competing against the conference that's been at the top of the sport for the past 2 decades.
The Boston Red Sox won, what, 4 World Series titles in 14 years, 13 years, something like that, and they've been in the basement the last 5 years. Life comes at you fast when you were playing with the best, my friend, on a consistent basis.
Yep.
And then you look at the Ohio State-Texas game, too. I mean, 3 weeks ago, Ohio State fans, by and large, were ready to fire Ryan Day, and he's now 1 win away from potentially, well,
Going to his second national championship.
He's a win away from going to his second national championship game, and they are the betting favorite right now. They would be the proverbial favorite, regardless of who they play in that game if they win this weekend. What a turnaround it would be. In a year ago, I don't think it's a stretch to say, Clinton, that if we had one more year of the 4-team playoff, they lost to Michigan, he might not be Ohio State's coach right now. I don't know if they would have fired him, but he might have just decided to say, I'm done with this. I'm going to the NFL, or I'm going to coach somewhere else. I can't keep putting my family through this. I'm not having fun anymore. This just is not worth it for me. And instead, they got a second life. They got motivated. They got their heads right. And they've played like the team we expected them to see all year.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Texas, like the joke on Steve Sarkisian for the longest time up until last year was, what was it, 7-win Steve? Guy couldn't win double-digit games.
Mm-hmm.
He did it last year. He got through to the semifinals, ran into an offensive buzzsaw with Michael Penix in Washington, and they came up a little short. Can he get him over the hump this time, Clinton? Can he, looking at that high-powered offense on the other side of the field, can they have some answers to stop it? Can they have answers to their own offense to keep up with what I'm sure is going to be a prolific offensive attack for Ohio State in this game? And can he get his team to the national title game, which I believe would be a first for Texas since
Mac Brown.
What was that? The Garrett, who replaced Colt McCoy the year he got injured against Bama? Was that 2008? Garrett Gilbert, maybe?
Maybe, yeah, I think so.
I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. I can't remember 2008. That's too long ago.
That has been an eternity ago, man. 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We were 16.
We were 16. And, like, Ohio State is the most recent national champion. So we're not only are we getting a first-time coach who's winning a national title, and I know, like, the public at large probably is pretty sick of Ohio State just because they're in the conversation every year. They haven't won a national title in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's been almost 20 for Texas. You mentioned 1986 for Penn State. It's been 1988 for Notre Dame. So we're going to get a
fresh team.
A fresh team who's winning a national title this year. So a lot of fun, a lot of storylines to watch. Regardless what happens this weekend, there's going to be plenty to talk about for both the winners and the losers. I am not looking forward to talking about it if Penn State wins, but it'll be fun nonetheless. I think
So
I'll
you guys have won how many in a row since Northwest? Is it Northern Illinois? Is this 13 in a row?
12 in a row.
12 in a row. So you've not had to face a loss, Ryan. I've had to face 2 losses in the time for my team since your team has had 1.
Yeah, well, my heart breaks for you.
However, I am fortunate that my team is now playing like the $20 million roster we expected them to be. And looks unstoppable. We'll see about that as we get ready to talk about these 2 semifinal games.
So we can go Orange Bowl first since it's the first game. I don't know how in-depth you want to go with this since we went pretty in-depth the other night with Matt. But your thoughts, I mean, you were kind of the moderator bystander there, if you will. Any thoughts you wanted to add to that discussion on this game?
Well, I had a fun fact for this game that I wanted to start out, and it sits with Penn State. And this is from Landon Tangwall, who we've talked with a little bit, who's getting a little more national shout out now. Matt Flip shouted him out on our show. Ty shouted him out on the Solid Verbal. So good for growth for him. He tweeted out, since his career began in 2022, Penn State is 13-1 when Katron Allen rushes for 80 yards or more. So you want to know how to beat Penn State, Ryan? Don't let Katron Allen run for over 80 yards.
Well, yeah, it's like the Georgia game. And they said after the game, we didn't think Georgia could beat us if we shut down their run game.
No,
and I think that probably holds true for the defensive staff for Notre Dame in this one. If they come into this game feeling like if we shut down the run, Penn State can't beat us, I don't think that's necessarily incorrect.
Yeah. My thoughts are, as I look overall, I asked both you guys about the injuries. Carter and Love are two massive, impactful players. They're opposite sides of the ball. So if we look at the Carter thing, and there's speculation now, people are trying to report he's 100% go. Well, even if he's 100% go, he's not 100% healthy. So how does that impact him in a pass rush situation in which you need a shoulder and arm to deflect offensive linemen away from you? Even though he's a top 5 pick, top 10 pick, and we've seen numerous dudes play one arm before through a game, this is the biggest game of his career to this point. So how much does it impact him if he can only go 50% of his normal snaps, if he can only go 10% of his normal snaps? Game's on the line, and you need a stop in a pass rush situation, you can bet Abdul Carter, arm dangling at his side, will run onto that field and try to make one more play. And so his ability to impact the game. And then you flip it to the other side. Jeremiah Love, who's had such a fantastic season running the ball. Riley Leonard and Jadarian Price have been very important for your guys' run game, but I think Love is your explosive game changer. He's got this big, bulky brace. I've heard this from a couple different sources now. I've heard and seen some video of him going through drills in practice. And again, if you're trying to make it to the game, you're not going to do anything stupid, right, with difficult drills, but just the drills that you're going to kind of go through are ones to see a move, but the impact becomes when you really have to make that true cut in the game, the plant and the go, the change of direction, and how that knee tolerates it. And a big bulky brace is only going to slow you down a little, right? Like, he's not going to have the same explosiveness, I guess, out of those changes of direction. So how much those injuries impact this game? I hope not a bunch. I wish both the teams could be fully healthy. And then I kind of look at Penn State and my thoughts for them. Can you protect Aller? Notre Dame, probably going to come after you. I bet they feel confident that they can play man on your receivers and you not beat them over the top, and they're going to try to force you to do so. Aller may have to do something where it's get the ball out of your hands quickly with the Notre Dame pass rush coming after him. I think the Penn State O-line has been solid, but I don't think it's quite up to snuff what they usually are. We saw a Boise State pass rush that sacked Aller 5 times in their last game. And then we talked about the run game, Penn State's ability to run the ball. And their biggest matchup of the season was Ohio State. Penn State couldn't run the ball at all. And then we saw how that game panned out. No offensive touchdowns. Notre Dame, impact, shorter layoff. It's only a day, but it's a day less of rest. Well, it's almost 2 days, right? Because Penn State played Tuesday night.
It's like a day and a half.
And then you got to recover from all the pats on the back you've gotten from knocking out the SEC champion in Georgia. And the love that you're getting, and Marcus Freeman, the love that he's getting, even though he seems laser focused in every interview he does right now. And then what if Penn State neutralizes Riley Leonard's legs in this game? Maybe not the entire game. He's going to get some plays, right? But if they make enough plays to stop his legs from impacting the game, can he pass it enough to stretch the defense? I think Penn State's also going to feel confident. We're going to line up and play man on you and see if you guys have anything to beat us in a pass game, and we're going to focus on your run. Where I see it, and you mentioned the receiver you thought could break it open and make the play for Notre Dame the other night, but Omari Evans for Penn State. He's a big play receiver. Is there something in this game that he can even get one big play, 2 big plays? Or is it more like the Julian Fleming, like Matt mentioned, and he's just the tough yard plays that make the change in this game? And my last piece, I was just having fun looking at the run game stats, man. Penn State's 202 yards per game. Notre Dame's 217 yards per game. Penn State only allows 100.9, and Notre Dame only allows 127.9. So it is, again, it's like looking in the mirror. And which one of these teams can establish a run? And if neither can't, it's down to the quarterback. And which quarterback do you trust more?
Was that a rhetorical question? Or?
No, I mean, I'm posing that out loud, but you're more than welcome to jump in now.
So,
it's
like,
kind of where my thoughts kind of ended for that game.
No, so I saw a couple different, one of the podcasts I was listening to had a couple different interesting stats. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was in Drew Aller's career, over his 800 whatever career attempts per PFF, he's only had 12 turnover-worthy throws. So the dude takes care of the football. Like, you might be able to...
He only threw one pick after starting an entire season last year.
Yeah, so you might be able to fluster him with pressure and get him to dirt a couple of balls or underthrow a couple of guys, but when he's missing, he's not... Like, and I think that's maybe why people look at, like, there's been so much weird discourse on Drew Aller over the course of this season. It's like, when he misses like comically bad, but it's like out of bounds or like 15 yards short, where it's just like, it's not a dangerous throw. And I mean, I take that if I'm a Penn State fan. Like, maybe he misses his guy, but it's not like what couple times we've seen this year with like Riley Leonard throwing over the middle. It's like, Jesus Christ, that should have been intercepted. What were you thinking? But like, they're two... That's why I think the conversation, and I mean, there's been some real scorching hot takes from some different people over the course of this week on who's the best quarterback, or how would you rank the quarterbacks in the college football. Like, what was it? Was it Acho on, I don't remember if it was the ESPN's Acho or Fox Sports' Acho. Well, who also made headlines for other reasons that we won't get into tonight. But one of them said, like, there was dogging on Will Howard. I'm like, what? What? So, like, I get, like, from a throwing standpoint, Riley Leonard's not, like, and we talked about this with Flip. If Notre Dame's down by a couple scores in this game, they haven't had to come back from that. I do not trust Riley Leonard to pilot this offense from a 10 to 14 point deficit to win this game. Like, that's just not the quarterback he is. But if they stay ahead of the game, they stay ahead of the chains, their defense keeps them in this game, they get a big play on defense or special teams, he's absolutely the kind of offense that can kill the clock for you, run this clock out, and win a game.
You saw it against Georgia.
Saw it against Georgia. You take 7.5 minutes off the clock at the end of the game to ice that one.
And it's one thing, man, when just your running backs and your O-line impose their will on you, but when your quarterback can also deliver blows to people, and this is not the harping back again with Ohio State, but you remember the Urban Meyer days, even with Tim Tebow or J.T. Barrett.
Run them over.
It's okay. You knew what was coming, and it didn't matter because they were just going to run you over. A quarterback that gets a 5-yard head start to sprint at you, you're not going to win those very often as a defender because he knows where you're going or he knows where he's going and you don't. And he's going to look to meet you in the hole. And Riley Leonard, I mean, there was even ones with Georgia. It didn't have to be up the middle. He'd just go right outside the tackle and get the yardage. And I think you're right. If it's within range, it's fine. But if he's got to pass it, I think you're a bit nervous.
Oh, sure, 100%.
Situation.
100%.
Well, more nervous than you already will be during the course of this game. But
and I don't remember. And again, these are vague stats; these aren't exact. They were talking about missed tackle rates for a couple of the guys in the middle of the Penn State defense, and they called out linebackers Tony Rojas, Dominic DeLuca. Both have over a 20% missed tackle rate this year. That's not like if you get like Penn State's defensive line is really good. There's going to be instances, plenty of instances in this game where Notre Dame's not able to get to that second level. But Notre Dame is, I think, first in the country in forced missed tackles this year. You get through that first level. If your linebackers can't bring down Price or Love or Leonard, now you're looking at a 5-yard run game that all of a sudden becomes a 30-yard gain. And, there's your big play. And now your defense is backed up on their heels a little bit.
I mean, hell, Ryan, if you're taking 5 yards carry, I'm going to take 5 yards a pop.
The
30-yard big play is nice, but if Notre Dame's sitting here averaging 5 yards carry tomorrow night,
if Notre Dame
Penn State's in trouble.
If Notre Dame if either of these teams average 5 yards a carry, I think they're going to win this game.
Yeah. Barring it's a 5 yards per carry that came off an 80-yard run.
Oh, sure. Like Love's
without
game,
the big play run, consistent 5 yards.
Yeah. Love's game against Indiana, or even Notre Dame's whole rush game against Indiana, where he had the 98-yard rush and then otherwise he ran for like 2 yards a carry. But I mean, my overarching belief on this game is the team that commits the catastrophic turnover. And I don't just mean like, you had a 3rd and 5 at the opponent's 45-yard line and you took a deep shot and you threw a pick. I mean, like, You turn the ball over in your own red zone. You throw a pick six. You allowed us to scoop and score. The team that makes the catastrophic mistake in this game, I think, is going to be the team that loses the game. And I think that's cheap analysis because it's like, no shit, that's usually how it happens in closely contested games like this. But things that I'm looking out for, you highlighted the passing matchup. I think both of these defenses are going to be very confident that they can match up with their defensive backs one-on-one against the opposing team's receivers. What I'm looking for either pass game in this one is who can hit a big play in the passing game early, because that has the potential to soften up the defense a little bit underneath, regardless of the team it is. You take a deep shot early in the first quarter in this game, if you hit it, you're going to force the other defensive coordinator to have to rethink the game plan a little bit, saying, hey, maybe we need to shift a little bit more help over the top. And if you're shifting more help over the top, that's fewer guys in the box who are going to be able to focus on the run game. So that'll be something that I'm looking for in this game. And then just protecting the quarterback, right? Regardless of if Abdul Carter is or is not 100% healthy, or is not a 100% participant in this game, Penn State still has some dudes who can get after the quarterback. Notre Dame's been pretty okay at protecting Riley Leonard this year, and even when they don't, he's good enough to escape the pocket and make guys miss. But we've seen in these bigger games, and we've seen them against a lot of elite edge rushers this year. Nick Scorton in game one, Jalen Walker last time against Georgia. I think Anthony Knapp at left tackle is still susceptible to top-end rushers, which, no shit, you're a true freshman in college football, you should be. But I think that's a matchup that Penn State looks to exploit in this one, to try to get Notre Dame behind the sticks, try to hit Leonard earlier. Even, if you catch him on his blind side, you force a fumble and get a cheap turnover with that. Anyway, that's all.
I can tell you're excited.
I just want this game to be over. I'm kind of interested. Did you see any? They had their the coaches' joint press conference today, and Marcus Freeman was his typical boilerplate locked in answers, and James Franklin was waxing poetic about how everyone needs to be in a conference and shit, and how they need to make things even in the sport. It's like, brother, man, you play the biggest game of your coaching career in 48 hours, and this is what you're talking about.
Just getting nervous.
That seemed a little weird to me. I don't, maybe I'm looking too much into it. Maybe it was nothing, but why is that where your focus is right now?
Yeah. I don't know, man. Coaches say weird things when they get in front of the media sometimes. Remember when Deshaun Foster walked up to Big Ten Media Days for the first time?
Yeah, that's true. But he's a first time head coach.
He is, but it's James Franklin. I don't know. He's an interesting specimen. One more thing before we do our picks. Does it give you pause, Ryan, to think Georgia doesn't have great receivers either, and some of their dudes were buck naked. They just can't catch balls. Mm-hmm. If Penn State's guys get that open tomorrow night, Penn State does have a proclivity to drop balls, but I think Penn State's going to test that, and they have a way better quarterback to test it.
For sure. 100%. I mean, yeah, it's always a worry because we've been going through the majority of this season thinking, well, I have been at least, I don't know about everyone else, but thinking statistically at least Notre Dame's pass defense is the best in the country. And we saw them against USC. They picked on Christian Gray. They had some success with it. We saw it against IU. They picked on Christian Gray a couple of times, had some success with it. Georgia had one big play, and they otherwise got shut down, I think, for the most part, other than that one. And obviously a couple of drops assisted with that. But I mean, it's always sitting in the back of your head. You know that weather's not going to be a factor. It's not going to impact the passing game. And, say what you want about Arian Smith as an overall wide receiver, but he's one of the fastest players in the country, and he got past Christian Gray. And I think if he can do it, Omari Evans can do it too. So that'll be something to pay attention to in this game as well.
You can go ahead and pick the game. It's your team first.
I mean, I made my pick on Wednesday or Monday.
For the people who maybe didn't hear Monday, reiterate it.
If you didn't hear our podcast on Monday, you should go listen to it. There was a lot of great information. I picked Notre Dame to win 24-20. Sue me, it's a homer pick. I don't know who's going to win this game. I truly have no idea, but I'm not picking against the Irish because I don't want that on my conscience. If they lose, they lose. We're going down swinging.
If they lose, Ryan boozes. Just remember.
I can't. No, I cannot.
He has to go to work. Never mind.
I have to go to work on Friday.
So for me, it's been this whole thing the entire time. I trust both defenses to play well. I don't think that surprises anyone. It comes down to quarterback and which one do I think can make the play, or which one do I trust more to make the play. And I feel like in a scenario late in a game that if it's a minute 30 left and you've got to make the drive to win the game, I trust Aller more because he can throw better than Riley Leonard. I know Leonard's legs are impactful, right? But if you know that's all Riley Leonard can do, then you're going to set up some type of contain and try to keep him in front of you from doing that. And to try to do that all the way down the field to score a touchdown to win a game is going to be hard to do. I think it's a great game. I'm certainly would be hitting the under in this game. My final score, Penn State 23, Notre Dame 20.
That's real original. Just pick a 23 points to win the game. Where have we seen that one before?
Wait, did you?
Clinton.
Huh? You know.
Notre Dame scored 23 against Georgia.
Well, here we are. I'm just flipping it. 23-20, Penn State.
I truly have no idea what's going to happen in this game. Like, you could tell me any sort of, I said, I'm repeating myself because I said this on Monday. You could tell me any outcome. Like, you could tell me one of these teams wins 38-10, and I could see the path for it. Like, someone just comes out and just keeps shooting themselves in the foot and makes stupid-ass mistakes, and it just keeps snowballing. And the other
You
team
say
takes
that, but then
advantage.
you just said how Aller takes care of the ball. And Notre Dame, Riley Leonard has made some dumb mistakes, but I think that is the least likely outcome in this game. Is it
No, I
a
agree.
blowout.
I agree.
I don't think it happens at all. I think there's a 1% chance.
I wouldn't pick it to happen, but I'm saying if you told me it happened, I could see the path to it. Because you got to think, Drew Aller's good at taking care of the ball. Riley Leonard's been pretty good about taking care of the ball, too, for the most part this year. He's had a couple of brain-dead throws, but otherwise he's been pretty good about not putting the ball in danger. And it's not even like bad decisions. It's just like, it was probably a good decision, but your throw was so bad that it just looked like a bad decision. But like, are there any early game jitters? It's the biggest game that any of these guys have played. You make a mistake early, get in your own head. Maybe it snowballs. I don't know. Like, I'm just saying either side, and I'm not just saying like, oh, I think it's going to be Drew Aller who throws 3 interceptions in the first quarter or something like that. If it happened either way, like if you told me one of these teams won by 28, I'd be like, I could probably understand how that would happen. Which I guess, I mean, again, that's true for any game, but whatever. I'm just rambling now because I have 0 functioning brain cells and I don't have the emotional capacity to talk about this game anymore.
All right. Well, then I will swing us to the Cotton Bowl. 7:30 Eastern Time, 6:30. Is that Central Time?
Central Time.
Friday night in Jerry World, where there may or may not be a snowpocalypse that rolls in to impact the fans to this game. Ohio State, Texas. 2 prolific offenses, 2 prolific defenses. A potential shootout on the horizon. We'll have to see. Some things that I noted for this game, Ryan. Actually, I noted a lot, so I can help you save your voice here. The 2 first ones I had. What if Ohio State doesn't start fast? We've seen a fast start in the first 2 games, but they've also gotten the coin toss. What if the coin toss goes to Texas? And you can start fast on defense. I get that. But let's say Texas goes down and scores first. It's 7-0. How does Ohio State respond? What if Texas gets up 14-3? God forbid, hopefully we're not kicking field goals, but if it's 14-3, how does Ohio State respond? The next thing I'm looking at is the 2 teams Ohio State has played, Tennessee and Oregon. They've had a really hard time containing the big play. More specifically, the big play that goes to Jeremiah Smith. Multiple plays. Texas has played 70% man coverage this year, Ryan, only allowing 166.1 yards passing per game in 2024. That's a pretty impressive pass stat. And if you're going to sit in zone, you're essentially trying to protect yourself from that big play. Now, there are big plays to be found against zone, right? There are holes in zone for a reason. Will Howard has been taking care of the ball really well. And if Ohio State is going to give him time to make those throws, or Chip Kelly and Ryan Day are going to scheme it up to where he can make those throws, then they'll be just fine. But I'm not quite sure if I see Texas and their DBs trying to just man up Smith. I think that's a pride thing, and you might try it once or twice, and you might have to learn a lesson, but I think they're going to stick traditional on this. Go with what got you there. They're going to play mostly zone. Now, we mentioned the time for Will Howard to throw the ball. The Longhorns pass rush, man. Colin Simmons, freshman of the year, 9 sacks on the season. How does Ohio State deal with him? Well, if we look at their past 2 games, James Pierce Jr., Tennessee, washed, irrelevant. The Twin Towers, as Mateo Uyungale's dad said, or the Twin Terrors, whatever the hell he called them. Pretty much, again, washed. I didn't hear Mateo's name called at all, and I heard Jordan Burch's name called one time.
There's no way he called them the Twin Towers.
He
That's
called
not-
them something. Look it up.
That's not PC, buddy. You can't say that.
All right, well, look up what he called them. Why I'm jibber jabbing. He called
Big
them something.
Dave.
So can Ohio State protect Howard? They've done really good with the edge rushers. Their problem this year, up to the Michigan game, was more with the interior. And they've held pretty solid with that, with this rotation at guard that they've used. Now let's flip it. Texas's offense. Mr. Quinn Ewers, former Buckeye himself. Some fascinating throws and plays to win the game against Arizona State. A wonderful audible to hit the wide open touchdown to keep their asses alive. Ryan, he is 30 per PFF. He has a 38% completion percentage when facing pressure in this playoff.
Pretty
It's
good.
horrific when he has pressure in his face.
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Ohio State, what have they been doing this entire playoff? Generating pressure, especially with their front four. In 2 playoff games, Ohio State has 12 sacks, 4 against Tennessee, 8 against the Ducks. The Texas offensive line is also pretty beaten and battered. I believe both normal tackles are going to play in this game. Banks at left tackle, and then the normal starting right tackle will be on the field. But they're clearly not fully healthy, and nobody is this time of year, but those guys seem a little more beaten and battered than what the others may be, given that they're coming off fresh injuries. How can Texas's offensive line stop them? Can they give Quinn Ewers time to try to test Denzel Burke, David Sinigbonosin down the field with their wide receivers of Wingo, Bolden, Bond, to stress them out and see if you can draw a few holding penalties or PIs on Davis and Igbinosin. I believe I heard someone say today that at least the head ref in this game is the ref from the Ohio State-Tennessee game. And if it's anything we saw in the Ohio State-Tennessee game, they let them play a fair amount. There weren't a whole lot of flags. So we'll see how explosive Texas can be. And then the last piece on the Texas side, Ryan, we talked about this a little bit with Matt on Monday. Texas only had 1.8 yards per carry against Arizona State. When Texas has won in games this year, Ryan, what have they done well?
They run the football.
They run the damn football, and they run it well. See Clemson. However, I went back. They've played Georgia twice, right? Well, in that first game against Georgia, they only ran for 64 yards. What was that result, Ryan? A big fat L. Game 2 in the SEC Championship against a backup quarterback-led Georgia Bulldogs in the second half. How many yards did Texas run for in that one? 58. What did that result in, Ryan? Another big fat L. Last week, I think it was last week, who the hell knows? Time is a flat circle. I don't know.
That's my line.
Their last game that they played against Arizona State, they won, but it took double OT to get it, and their offense went absent for 2 quarters. They ran the ball for 51 yards. Ohio State is the number 5 rush defense in the country when it comes to yards per game allowed in rushing, and it is 92.2. If Texas cannot run the ball on Ohio State, they will not win this game 100%, book it, lock it, write it down, send it into Vegas. They can't win unless they can run the ball. Your thoughts?
I am not going to lie. I did not register anything that you said because I was trying to figure out if Dave called him his kid and Jordan Birch the Twin Towers or not, and I could not find anything.
Well, you've got to have thoughts on the game, right?
I mean,
Well, here's another one. Real quick, I got to get this one in. Your buddy J-Book, who you love so much. Going into this game, Texas's defense, though, has played 101 more snaps than Ohio State's defense in the last month. Ohio State has also rested a lot of their players in the fourth quarter of the past 2 games because their games have been blowouts. So something to keep an eye on late that you and I talked about coming into this season is snaps. Snap counts on a season. Which team can be fresh late? Is that something that plays a factor in this game potentially?
so like, what would be the thought process for picking Texas here? Because you have what's I know there's a lot of Ohio State fans in Texas and throughout the course of the country, but like this is pretty much a home game for Texas in Dallas. You have a really good defense. It's an excellent defense, like really good at selling it short, but also you're facing the hottest offense in college football right now, which I mean, again, there's 4 teams left. That's not saying a whole lot, but the Ohio State offense we envisioned preseason, we are seeing come to full force right now. And you have a offense on your own sideline that has not been good for the majority of the season against good teams. Like they struggled to move the ball against Georgia, who really good defense, still probably not as good as Ohio State. And other than that, I mean, I guess they moved the ball on Clemson, whoop-de frickin' do. That's probably the toughest other game that they have played this year. Couldn't run against Arizona State. Their regular season schedule was trash. So, like, we don't have I guess the best frame of reference would be early in the season when they played Michigan and they were just bullying Graham and Grant. So, like, they have it in them, but both tackles are banged up. Ewers' mobility is not great right now. I feel like the only reason that you would pick Texas in this game is because everyone's picking Ohio State and it just feels like it's too easy. I mean, as soon as my bet cashed when they beat Oregon, I immediately took it and I put it all on them to beat Texas. Like, that's free money? There's no way. There's no such thing as free money. Money doesn't grow on trees. This is my good analysis. I'm so chock full of elite analysis today. I guess, like, if we're hypothesizing a path for Texas in this one, just to play devil's advocate, it would be if there is a cornerback in college football who could slow down Jeremiah Smith, it would be Jody Barron, your Thorpe Award winner. It's possible for elite cornerbacks to shut down elite wide receivers. We see it in the NFL. It's not unheard of. Hasn't happened a lot to Jeremiah Smith this year. It's happened a couple times, and I mean, that wasn't just one cornerback doing it for Michigan. That was more of a scheme thing. But Pete Kwiatkowski is an excellent defensive coordinator. I'm sure he can figure out a way. It's whether or not they execute that plan. So you have an elite secondary. You have an elite pass rush who can potentially get after the quarterback in what is still a patchwork offensive line for Ohio State, as good as it has been playing the last 2 weeks. That's still a thing, man. Like that, you now have 2 additional game tape films that you can watch to kind of figure out what they've been doing differently from the regular season, to figure out how do we go about stopping it. And if there's a defense, I mean, there's 3 pretty good defenses left that are not Ohio State in this college football playoff. I think Texas is probably the best from both a schematic. I don't know about schematic. I don't know enough about X's and O's to make that proclamation, but definitely from a raw talent standpoint and what's available, especially with Abdul Carter not being at 100% for Penn State. So I guess if you're Texas, that's the path. So with 2 great defenses, 1 great offense, and 1 offense that could be good, but could also be really bad, what do you view the path of victory in this game if it is I know you're not going to pick Texas, but if you were hypothesizing a path of victory for Texas, do you think it would be more so having to slow the game down, limit possessions, and play a strong defensive game, or would it be more so you need your offense to keep scoring with Ohio State?
You got to win in a shootout. You got to score. You got to hit explosive plays. It's got to be kind of like the Oregon game back in October. And this is a completely different Ohio State defense now. And to an extent, you mentioned the Michigan game. It's almost a completely different Texas offense now because of the bruised and battered O-line, hurt quarterback. I think it has to be a shootout for Texas to have a chance. Because if your offense isn't going to score, Ohio State's eventually going to score. What do you consider a shootout? Each team getting 30 plus?
Yes.
Okay. So if we're playing in the 20s, Texas isn't winning because I already said Texas has to score more than 30 to beat Ohio State. So it has to be a shootout. Pressure on Will Howard, major key. If he's going to have, doesn't even need all day, but if he's going to have clear lanes to find underneath passes, you saw what Jeremiah Smith can do with an underneath drag route and take it to the house. We know that Emeka Egbuka can do the same. So I think it's got to be a shootout, and I think you got to force Will Howard into 2 turnovers. And, of course, I already said they have to be able to run the ball. I'm not saying they have to run for 200 and something like they did with Clemson. You need a complementary piece of a run game.
Oh, no, sure. Like, Notre Dame ran for 150 yards against Georgia. That wasn't exactly a dominant rushing performance, but as we sat there at the end of the game watching how that played out, the prevailing thought seemed to be, Jesus Christ, they kicked their ass in the trenches.
Yeah.
And then you look at the overall statistical profiles, like 150 yards and 4.4 yards per carry or something like that. Certainly nothing that lights up the stat sheet there at all. But when you watch how the game plays out, they're getting consistent push late in the game. They got stronger as the game went along. They were converting first downs and extending drives when they needed to kill clock. So maybe that's the path. I don't know.
I'm
not saying I buy it, but
because here's the problem: if you try to slow the game down and limit Ohio State possessions, that means Texas is going to have to score on almost every possession, right? If you're going to play a slow play game,
if you're being methodical about it,
it is. But see how quick strike Ohio State's offense is. So let's say you take a 10-minute drive. What if they score in 2 minutes?
Clinton, we also
It's
saw.
not going to matter.
I know you say that they're not going back to the Michigan game, but we also saw them look like dog shit against Nebraska.
We did. I'm not saying it's not in there. I just can't envision now when you found so much success with throwing the ball and then taking your run game off of that. Why would you then revert back to what you did when you just lost your most recent loss and an almost loss?
I don't know. Maybe
the biggest thing that I think now for Ohio State is they're not playing with their food anymore. They're going in full bite and just ripping its head off, and then the game's over.
Full bite.
Now, I don't expect Ohio State to be up 34-0 in this game. I don't expect them to be up 21-0. I expect this to be a closer game. I expect it to be a game that they have to play for 4 quarters to win.
Clinton, if this game is 34-0, I'm not watching the national title game. You're gonna have to find a new co-host for the next 3 weeks because I'm taking a vacation.
It is not going to happen.
Or unplug. Brian will be unplugging from the college football world.
What is the final line that we have for this game? I've heard 5.5.
Lock of the week.
I don't give a shit if it's 5.5, 6.5, 15.5. Ohio State's winning by a large margin. It's 5.5.
Okay. What's your final then? What's the large margin?
38-17.
Okay. I have it 31-17 Ohio State.
I just like it's one of those things. I'm freely willing to admit that I'm a prisoner of the moment and my recency bias is strong because we've seen throughout the course of this season like what good Texas looks like and what bad Ohio State looks like. And if those two teams simultaneously show up in this game, Texas is winning. But like Texas has not looked particularly impressive through 2 playoff games. And I don't know, maybe it was a situation where they're going into those games and they're like, we don't really care. We can beat this team if we play this team straight up, we're not losing this game. We just can't make stupid ass mistakes.
It's a dangerous game to play.
It is. And I'm not saying that's what they did. But if we are to assume, because we can only go off of what we know, right? And it's not like anyone with Texas has come out and said, we spent absolutely no time game prepping for Arizona State, and we were just watching Ohio State film all week to get ready for that game. We have to assume that Texas was full throttle into each of their 2 playoff games, and they've not looked particularly great. Whereas Ohio State looks like the best team in college football the last 2 weeks. So I have to go off of the best available information we have at the time, which is Ohio State looks really good. Texas, while a good, talented team, certainly capable of winning this game, has not played like that in a while.
Mm-hmm.
There you have it.
No lock of the week for me this week. I mean, I guess if I had to lock one up, I would feel more comfortable locking up Penn State. But I'm not going to officially call one. I'm not going to pick one. We're down to such the nitty-gritty, only 2 games. I appreciate your confidence in locking up Ohio State, but I don't have enough confidence to lock either one of these.
All right.
For my sake, I hope Ohio State dismantles Texas. And for all Big Ten Midwest fans, you might hate Ohio State, but you can root for Texas to lose. Because down with the SEC.
I think there's a lot of Big Ten fans that might hate Ohio State fans more than they hate the SEC.
It's certainly possible. Certainly possible.
All right. I'm going to bed.
But if Dave Portnoy can root for Ohio State, I think you all...
I think he's trolling you.
He is. He
he
doesn't want Ryan
knows-
Day to leave.
Because he knows what would happen if Ohio State won the national title. he would spend the rest of his life saying he'd print shirts. You know how much fucking money that guy would make off of shirts that had Ohio State's record with an asterisk by it in small print saying "Still lost to Michigan"?
You know he's gonna
Millions of dollars. I
Mhm.
should, you know what? I'm gonna copyright that idea right now, and I'm gonna make millions of dollars, Clinton. Me?
You don't have the power to create the amount of shirts that
No, I do
Dave
not.
Portnoy does.
I absolutely
So
do not. I
It will
would.
just overpower you.
Yeah. Well, if I have a copyright on it, Clinton, then I will sue him for copyright infringement.
Well, do your
If you
best
are
to
a
get
pat-
that done by tomorrow, Ryan.
If you are listening to this and you're a patent lawyer, please DM us. Anyway, okay. I'm going to bed. I'm friggin' tired. I need to be able to stay awake for this game tomorrow. I'm going to stay awake for the game tomorrow, but I would like to be a mostly pleasant person tomorrow at work. That's not going to happen either. Okay. Anything else?
He's just a rambling man today.
It's bad, dude. It's bad.
Oh no! Let's everyone enjoy the games. We only got 3 games left in this college football season. For what a fun season it's been. Whether you're a fan of any of these teams or not, just sit back, prop your feet up, and enjoy the games because you don't have many left.
For Clinton, I'm Ryan. We will be back with you. I don't know. When are we coming back? Sunday night?
Oh, Sunday night. We're doing a normal Sunday night reaction show.
Normal
Unless
Sunday
I get
night reaction
spunky and
show.
want to do it Friday night, but I'm aiming for Sunday.
All right. Well, we'll let you know. We'll be back Sunday. We'll have some sort of schedule for you guys next week once we figure that out. Thank you once again, everyone, for listening to Inside the Pylon Midwest College Football Podcast. For Ryan, I am Clinton.
Keep it inside the pylon, folks.
Did you hear what I just said? I said for Ryan, I am Clinton. All right. Goodbye,
yeah.
everyone. Fuck me. All right. That was
Don't do
fun.
drugs, kids.
Drugs are bad. Don't get too